How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf. What Daf should we study today? Chav Daled? Alright, today we're studying Daf Chav Daled of Masechta BavaBasra, friends. We continue on the discussion of Rov V'Karav Halechach Rov, and then we get to two other Mishnayos. Exciting stuff. Alright, let's start in Daf Chav Daled. Ralph, I have a coffee with me today. Very geschmack. Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Okay. Says the Gemara on Daf Chof Daled Amud Aleph. 3 lines into the Amud Amar Abai. Says Abai Af Onon Nami Tanina. That we could have a Mishnah that supports Reb Chanina's contention that Rov V'Karov Halech Achar Rov, that when you have a majority and when you have proximity, go based on the majority. Dam shenimsa bepruzder Sveiko Tome Shechezkoso Min Hamakor Vafagav Dika Aliyah Dimekarva. Okay. So if you have dam nida, if you have blood that's found in the pruzder is a reference to the vaginal canal. So if you have dam that's found in the pruzder, so the shaila is it dam nida, in which case the woman's tummy, or do we say that maybe it's dam that came from somewhere else, but this aliyah, which I think Rashi explains it as like one thing, but apparently anatomically that isn't necessarily correct. But the point is that this other blood from this aliyah would be, where am I? Right, would be dam tar, right? It wouldn't be dam nida, right? Dam nida would be dam that comes from the uterus, but any dam that might come from somewhere else internally wouldn't be dam nida. It would just be blood, but it wouldn't be tummy. So again, dam shenimsa b'pruzder, if there's dam that's found in the pruzder, sveiko tummy. So if you don't know, okay, fine. So we have blood. What's this blood? Is it dam nida or is it some other blood? Dam nida is tummy. Some other blood is tahor. So we say that it's tummy, sveiko tummy, because shechezkaso, because we have a chazaka min hamakor. We have a chazaka that it's dam nida. V'afalgav deika aliyah de mekarv, and even though there's this aliyah where any dam coming from the aliyah would be dam tahor, but and that de mekarv, and it's closer, right? It's closer to the pruzder than the uterus, which would be behind the pruzder, which would be further back. So now, even though the dam from the aliyah is closer, is karov, the dam from the makor, right, the dam nida, is more plentiful. There's more dam nida than there would be dam from the aliyah. So therefore we have karov, which is the aliyah, which is tahor, but we also have rov, which is dam nida from the makor, which is, even though it's not closer, but it's the rov. And we're saying that the dam is considered tameh, because rov v'karov sounds like, it's a rov v'karov. We go based on the rov, and therefore she's tameh. So Amalei Rove responds to Abai that is not necessarily a proof for Rov V'Karov Halech Achar Harov, because Rov Umatzui Kamar. There's actually 2 chazakas over there. It's not just that the dam nida is the Rov, that there's more dam nida than there would be dam aliyah, but also that it's more frequent, right? Dam nida would happen every month, whereas dam from the aliyah, any other dam there would just be like a wound, like internal bleeding, like that isn't something that is common, and therefore, so because there's 2 reasons to say that it would be dam nida. A, there's more dam nida than there is dam aliyah, and secondly, dam nida happens frequently, whereas this dam aliyah would just be considered bleeding and shouldn't be happening at all, I guess. So therefore, there's rov and matzui versus just karov, and that is why, right, this would only prove that rov and matzui would be tameh. Where am I? So ka'amar rov u'matzui lekalaman da'amar. And obviously, if you have rov plus matzui, nobody would disagree with that. Obviously, it would be tummy. The Tani Reb Chia, that Reb Chia teaches damanimtzu bepruzder, that this dam that's found in the pruzder chayovin olav al bias mikdash. Right? If a woman sees this dam, and then she goes into the Beis HaMikdash by accident, she would have to bring a korban. Now, you'd only bring a korban, right? She'd only bring a korban if she was definitely tummy. If she was suffik tummy, you wouldn't bring a korban for that, right? It could be chulin ba'azar. If you're not supposed to bring a korban and you bring a korban, that's a problem. So, in order for her to bring a korban, it must mean that we are 100% certain that this is, right, that she's tameya. We're not just being, it's not just like a chumrah over here. We're 100% certain that she's tameya. And if she touches truma, so then we would burn the truma. And again, if it was suffik whether she's tameh, we wouldn't burn it. We would just kind of like not do anything with it. But so the fact that we're going to burn the truma means that we're 100% sure that she's tameh. Rava says Rava Shmamina midu Reb Chia tlos, says Rava that we learned three things from Reb Chia's statement. Right, that we said that a woman who sees dam bepruzder, so then she would bring a korban for bias mikdash and sorfin olav truma. We learned three things. Shmamina rov v'karov halech achar rov. So the first thing that we learn out is that when you have rov and karov, we go based on rov. Now the Gemara is about to ask, wait, didn't Abaye try to make that argument? And Rava said it's rov and matzui. Okay, we'll get there in a second. But it says Rava right now that we see from Reb Chia who says that she is 100% tmeya, and she would bring a korban for bias mikdash and sorfin olav truma. So that means that rov and karov halech achar rov v'shmamina ruba d'oraisa, and that rov is midoraisa. Right, again, from the fact that we're saying that she brings a korban or that we burn truma, must mean that we're 100% certain that she's tmeya, and we're saying that she's tmeya based on rov, which means that rov is midoraisa. V'shmamina isla d'obzera d'amr obzera afapisha Delasos Medina Neulis, Aisha ki Delasos Medina Neulis Damya. Vafilochi Kazlin and Basaruba. Can anybody tell me what this means? This relates to the famous sugya of the Teisha Chanuyos. When you have a city that has 10 butchers and 9 of them sell kosher meat and one of them sells typhus, sells treif meat. And you find a random piece of meat in that town. So we say, called the parish, meruba parish, that we can assume that it comes from the majority, which is kosher meat, and you can assume that the meat is kosher. Now this is, says Obzera, this is even if the gates of the city are locked. What does that mean? Well, because I might think that you would require 2 rovs. One rov being that 9 out of 10 of the butchers are kosher. Another rov being that maybe other butchers come with meat from outside of the city, and most of those butchers are also kosher. So we have a double rov. The majority of the local butchers are kosher, and also the majority of any external outside butchers who are coming to the city are also kosher. So then we would have a double rov. But says Reb Zera that this halacha applies even if the gates of the city are closed and there's no other butchers coming in from outside of the city. Simply relying alone on the single rov of the city is enough. And the same thing applies to Dam Nida as well. There's simply one rov, the rov of the Dam Nida versus this Dam Aliyah. So again, Vishmamina is l'du Reb Zera, and we learn that we hold of Reb Zera, the Amr Reb Zera, Afabisha Delasos Medina Neulis, even though the gates of the city are locked and no other butchers are coming in, still we could rely on the rov of the butchers alone. Because a woman is like the Delasos Medina Neula in that there's only one rov. And even so, Kazlin and Basaruba, we are going based on the rov, on the single rov. But one second, why is Rava saying that we see from Reb Chia that rov v'karov alech achar rov? I thought, didn't Rava argue against Abaye who tried to make that same argument? And Rava says, what do you mean? There's rov umatzui here, not just rov. Where am I? Rava moved on from that. He changed his mind. Yeah, initially he challenged Abaye, by arguing that Nida is Rov Umatsui, but then he reverted, like Abaye, that it's simply Rov V'Karov Halech Acher Rov. Weiter. Itmar, it was stated, Chovis Shetsofa Banor Bararara. If you have a barrel of wine that's floating in the river, you have a barrel of wine that's floating in the river. So the shaila is the wine kosher? Can you get fashnikit? If you find this barrel, in the river next to a Yiddish city, so enjoy, right? Tov leiv mishta tomid. It's good for the heart to always be partying. Get fashnikit. Can you get irshu nachim asura? But if it's opposite a Gentile city, so then you have to assume stam yenim, you can't drink it. Shmuel says that even if you find it next to a city that is a Jewish city, you may not drink the wine. Because Shmuel says we have to be concerned that it came from Dikira, which was the big city upstream. So it sounds like let's say that the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel is whether you hold of Rab Chanina de Ma'isle de Rab Chanina Ma'lesle de Rab Chanina, that Shmuel holds of Rab Chanina and Rav doesn't hold of Rab Chanina. Who can explain to me what this means? Well, it means, right, there's Rov and there's Karov. You find this barrel outside of a Jewish city. So in terms of Karov, proximity, well, the Jewish city is right nearby. So in terms of proximity, you should be able to drink the wine. And who says you could drink the wine? Rav says that. So it sounds like Karov and Rov. You go based on Karov. Shmuel says you have to be concerned that it comes from Dikira. Dikira is the big city that's upstream. So in terms of Rov, if we zoom out, what's the majority of the wine in the area? It would be coming from the big city, from Dikira. Now, Dikira is not a Jewish city. So if we go based on Rov, we'd have to be concerned that this is not kosher wine, and therefore you cannot drink it, which is what Shmuel says. So we want to make the argument that perhaps you can explain that Rav says you could drink it because we say Rov v'Karov halech acher hakarov, which is the nearby Jewish city, whereas Shmuel says Rov v'Karov halech acher harov, which is the big city, which is Dikira, and therefore you cannot drink it. Lo nisht t'chuliyam islu Rab Chanina. No, everybody holds a Rab Chanina. Rov v'Karov halech acher harov. Well, then why does Rav say that you're allowed to drink the wine? What about Dikira? Here's the machlokes to my sover im isa to mi Dikira asoy akule ufashuri hava matbei lo. Says Rav, look, I understand that conceptually Rov v'Karov halech acher harov, that when you have a proximity and a majority, you go based on the majority. But here it's entirely impractical. Why is it impractical to go based on the majority? Because Dikira was upstream. For a barrel of wine to float downstream, it's going to hit rocks and clefts and things that are going to break the barrel. It is unlikely that a barrel of wine that started floating down the river in Dikira would make it to this location intact. And therefore the fact that it is intact means we can assume that it is not from Dikira, and instead it is from a nearby city, and that nearby city is Jewish, and therefore it is kosher. Whereas Shmuel says, whereas Shmuel says, well, it could have gotten midstream, center stream, right? It could have gotten right into the middle of the river, where the current is stark, and there aren't so many michsholim, there aren't so many hazards and things, and therefore it'll just go straight down the middle of the river and it would avoid any harm. And therefore Shmuel is concerned that, well, maybe this is a barrel that kind of got into the middle of the river from Dikira and just went straight down, and it is not kosher wine. Excuse me. There was a barrel of wine that was found in a Bipardesa de Orla, in a vineyard of Orla. Now, obviously, Orla you cannot eat. Now, you found a barrel of wine in the vineyard of Orla. So, in terms of Karov, well, the closest possible place for this wine to have come from would be Punkt, the vineyard that you're in, which is Orla, which would mean that you can't drink it. So, but if we go based on Rov, well, most wine isn't Orla, so then you can drink it. Sharia Ravina, so Ravina says that it's mutter. So, Lema Mishum Disavarla to Reb Chanina. So let's say because he holds like Reb Chanina that Rov v'Karov halech achar Rov. That even though the Karov is Orla, but the Rov is not Orla, and we're saying it's mutter because halech achar harov. And for the Gemara, shiny hosam. Now it's different over there. The miganev mine atznoi begave lo matznoi panimili chamaval inve matznoi. To which we say it's not necessarily simply rov v'karov halech achar rov. There's another practical element here, which is that, meaning, what's the concern? That maybe somebody. Well, the concern is that maybe it comes from this field. Now, if somebody stole this barrel, right, they found the random barrel in a field. The assumption is that somebody stole it and put it there. Now, if you steal a barrel, the assumption is that if somebody were to have stolen that barrel from this very field, they would not have also hidden it in this very field. They would have taken it somewhere else to hide it. So from the fact that you have a barrel that's been hidden here, you can assume that it was taken from somewhere else. And since the majority of wine is not Orla, so you can assume that this wine is not Orla. Right? So there was a kind of like more practical elements here. So again, Shani Osam, it's different over there, right? It's different by the barrel of wine. The miganev mino atznui begavilo matznoi. That if this barrel of wine was in fact stolen from this very Orla field, they would not have hidden it in this very field. Vanimili chamro, that's specifically wine though, aval inve matznoi. But grapes, they would hide in the field. But specifically wine, they wouldn't, because Rashi says that the people who would do the stepping on the grapes and stuff, they would go looking for it and they would find it. But grapes would be a different story. So therefore, according to so if it's wine, you would stash it some other place if you stole it. Hanu zike de chamra de ishtakchon be kopoi. There were these, what does Rashi say? Zike nodos, flasks maybe? You had like wine in a barrel, and then you would pour it into these like, I don't know what the word, pouches? I think maybe pouch is a good word. Hanu zike dechame de ishtakron be kopoi. So there were these pouches of wine that were found, what's be kopoi? Tmunim bein gefonim shebekereb v'ishal Yisrael. They were found among vines in a vineyard, and the vineyards belong to a Yid. So in terms of, so the question is, can you assume that the wine is kosher? So anuzike dechamra. So there were these pouches of wine, the shakram bekopai, and they were found among these in this like Jewish vineyard. Sharanu Rava, and Rava allowed them to drink from the wine. So it sounds like we're going based. So here we want to say that the rov is that it would be non-kosher wine. But the karov is that you found it in the vineyard of a Jew. So if you go based on karov, we would say that you could drink it. If you go based on rov, then you cannot drink it. And Rava said you can drink it. So let's say that he does not hold of Reb Chanina, that rov v'karov, Rava would say olech achar karov, and you could drink it. Right? So Sharanu Rava, Rava said you could drink it. Leima los avla Reb Chanina. Let's say he does not hold of Reb Chanina because he's going based on karov. You can say no, he does hold of Reb Chanina. That rov v'karov halech achar ha rov. So what's pshat over here? Shani osam deruba deshvocha Yisrael ninu. Basically, most of how did wine end up in that pouch? Why was it not in a barrel? Why was it in a pouch? It was in a pouch because people who owned the wine would wholesale and retail, right? You would have the barrel. You're not going to sell a barrel. Or at least how they were. Basically, the idea is that they would sell the wine to people, to like travelers, right? People traveling, whatever. I guess they were on the road and they would buy a pouch of wine. They weren't going to buy a whole barrel, but you buy, a bit of wine, I guess. So who are the people that are kind of taking the wine from the barrels and putting them into these smaller pouches to be able to sell to the travelers? Yisrael Ninu, the Yidden. So from the fact that you found the wine in these pouches, Mistama, a Yid, poured out the wine from his barrel into a pouch that he could then sell it to the travelers. Therefore, you can assume that the wine is kosher. That is for the relatively larger pouches, because what you would do is you would empty from the barrel into a pouch, a larger pouch. From the larger pouch, you would then empty into smaller pouches, and the smaller pouches is what you would sell to the travelers, right? Because the traveler isn't going to want a big, large pouch, just a small pouch. So they were like, I guess the barrel was like really big. It had lots and lots and lots in there, lots of pouches worth. And then, you would kind of empty it into a pouch, which is much smaller than the barrel. But then from the pouch, you would further empty it into smaller pouches that you would then sell. So if you found a larger pouch, which is what a Yid would pour into, so that they could then further divide it into smaller pouches that they would then sell directly to the travelers. So if you find it in the larger pouch, you can assume that it's still sort of being handled by a Yid. If you find smaller pouches, so then you have to be concerned that it was already sold to an Oved Kochavim, in which case it's a problem. So again, when we say that you can drink this wine, is if it's in the larger pouches of Al Zutre, Eimer Me'ovre Drachim Nafel. But if it's a smaller pouch, so then we have to assume that maybe it fell from one of the travelers, and the travelers, maybe Ovde Kochavim, Ve'i Ika Ravve Ba'adayu. But if together with the small pouches, there were also larger pouches, Eimer Ba'avruve Hava Manche. So if you found these small pouches, but together with the small pouches, there were also bigger pouches, so then we can assume that it's kosher because we can assume that it's from the Yidden who were selling the wine. So why were there smaller pouches? Well, because when you have a donkey and you put a larger pouch on the donkey, and then you put, I guess, another pouch or other weights on the other side of the donkey, and you need to balance it, so it's not a perfect balance right now. So you might take a few smaller pouches and add it in order to just balance things. So you can still, so as long as there were larger pouches together with it, you can assume that it came from a Yid. And even if there are smaller pouches, oichet, you can assume that the smaller pouches were for technical reasons there, just to kind of balance the load on the donkey. Alright, next Mishnah. Here we go. So we distance a tree from a city 25 amas. Okay, the Gemara is going to explain, interesting, because it's beautiful for a city to have a nice open space in front of it rather than like covered by trees and stuff, but to have a nice entryway before the city, that it should be cleared of trees and spacious. So we distance a tree from the entrance of a city 25 amas, or maybe not even the entrance, maybe just any part of the city. So we distance a tree from the city 25 amas, a carob tree or a sycamore tree, we distance 50 amas because they have lots of branches. Abashol, Omer says Abashol called Elon Srak Chamishim, any non-fruit producing trees, distance 50 amas. Okay. Fine. Rashi says Genaihu La'ir because it's not nice for the city to have non-fruit producing trees. Alright. Im Ha'ir Kodma, if the city preceded the tree, Kotetz Ve'eno Nosin Damim. So you got to cut down the tree. Right? The city was there first, and then somebody planted a tree. So you got to cut down that tree, and that planter is not entitled to any reimbursement. V'im Elon Kodam, if the tree was there first, Kotetz, so you still have to cut it down, but V'nosin Damim. The one who owned the tree is entitled to restitution. Does that make sense in this context? If you are unsure which was first, was the tree there first? Was the city there first? So where am I? So you cut it down, right? Because we said that even if it's going to come up a little bit later in the Gemara, even if the tree was there first, for sure, we still say cut it down, right? He's entitled to restitution. We would still cut it down. So certainly then, if it's a suffix, we would also cut it down. But he would not be entitled to restitution if we're not sure which was there first. My timer, Gemara, how come no trees are allowed outside of the city? Because of the beauty of the city, that it's beautiful to have a nice open space outside of the city. Let's learn it out because we don't make the fields into a migrash, not the migrash into a field. Wait, let me just see something quickly. Wait, what? Wait, awesome. I have to look up what these things. Yeah, I didn't do my homework. Right, it's I don't remember if this was specifically the Arya Levim or was this all cities? I can't remember. Maybe it's Arya Levim. Maybe it's the Arya Levim. I can't remember. But anyways, these cities would have to be would have to have outside of them 2,000 amas. 1,000 amas was for fields, and the other 1,000 amas was for open space, I guess. I don't know, maybe you'd make like tennis courts and things. I don't know. So the point is, so where are we? So my time. So Amur Mishum Noya here. But typically the Ein Osin Sade Migrash Velo Migrash Sade. But let's learn it out that you can't make the field, the 1,000 amma field portion into the open space, and you can't make the open space into the field portion, and therefore, if the 1,000 amos outside of the city needs to be for tennis courts and things, and golf courts and golf, what are those things called where you play golf? A golf thingy? No. A golf course. Yeah, so if outside of the city you're supposed to have a golf course, so you can't plant a tree there. So memele, you can't plant a tree there anyways. Why do we need to say you can't have a tree 25 amas away? Of course you can't. I mean, the trees are for the field area, not for the golf course. So v'tepukle teinosin sada migrash. You can't make the field into a golf course. V'lo migrash sada, not the golf course into a field. Lo tzricha l'Reb Elazar. Well, what about according to Reb Elazar? The Amar Osin sada migrash or migrash sada. You can make the field into a golf course and vice versa. So mishum noye ha'ir lo avdinan. But even so, still, because of in the interest of beautifying the city, we would not put a tree in the golf course. And even according to rabbis who said that we don't make the golf course into a field, not the field to the golf course. So therefore we said, Simimele, the area outside of the city you can't plant anyways. Well, Hanimile Zroim means you can't plant wheat. Aval Ilonis, but trees of Dinan, right? You can make trees on the golf course, just not don't make it into a farm. So, but v'hacham mishum noyah lo. But here, even though technically you can plant trees in the migrash area, but not if it's too close to the city, because we want to beautify the city by having open space outside of it. And how do we know that there is such a distinction between plants, crops versus trees? Titania, learn a brisa from Masechta Eruvin. That was a long time ago. Masechta Eruvin. Where are we now? Was it July? We must have started learning Masechta Eruvin probably like July, August 2020. Probably just maybe slightly less than 4 years ago. The Tanya Karpaf Yosem Ibeis Sosayim Shukaf Ladira do. Okay. I don't know. Hopefully I remember mostly correctly. Basically, in terms of carrying on Shabbos, so if it's an enclosed area, so it's a Rishus HaYachid, you can carry there. But if it's too big, right? If it's Yosem Ibeis Sosayim, if it's more than an area of 2 sa'as, so then it depends. If it's specifically for living in, Okay, so if it's for living in, you can carry in it, no problem. But if it's not for living in, well then you can't carry in it. So if we have this, right, so Karpaf, Yosem Beis Osayim, so if you have this big area that's bigger than 2 saw, Shehukaf Ladira, that was enclosed but for living, so you can carry there. If it's for living, it's fine. But Nizra Ruba, but what happens if you then make it into a field, make it into a garden? So if the majority of it becomes a garden, well then we say, wait 1 second, this is not for living, this seems to be for gardening, and you cannot carry in this large area. Nita rubo, but if you planted trees, well then it's still considered like a chotzer, a mutter, and it would be considered a private space, and you can carry in there. So there is this distinction between crops versus trees. Okay, excuse me, drink a little more coffee. Fine. If the city was there before the trees, so then, right, so the city was already there, and then somebody planted the tree. So we say that the planter needs to cut down the tree, and he is not entitled to restitution. Maishnagabe bor dikatoni kotzetz v'nosein domim umay shno hacha dikatoni kotzetz v'eno nosein domim. How come, right, as we're going to learn on that tomorrow, I guess, on Daf Chafei Mud Beis, that this mission that we've been talking about all the way back since Bava Metzia, then the Bava Metzia. So funny, it still feels to me like we're still at the beginning of BavaBasra. We're already 25 daf be'etzim into BavaBasra. We've been learning it for almost a month already. But it just feels like we're mamish still at the beginning because it's so big. Anyways, where are we? So how come in this Mishnah that we're going to learn tomorrow, and that we've seen already several times, that when Shimon has a pit in his field, and Reuven plants a tree in his field, so we say that, hey, Reuven, according to the Chachamim, Reuven has to cut down his tree because it's going to cause damage to Shimon's pit. Now, we say there, if the pit was there first, Shimon's pit was there first, and then later Reuven planted the tree, so the Chachamim say Reuven needs to cut down the tree, but he's entitled to restitution. Shimon needs to pay him for it. And over here we're saying if the city was there first, and then the tree was planted, so the tree needs to be cut down, and he's not entitled to restitution. What's the difference between the city versus the individual? So Ma'ishno Gabe Bor, again, how come by the pit, the Katani Kotzetz, we say Reuven needs to cut down the tree, V'nosein damim, but he's entitled to restitution. Ma'ishno Acho, how come over here by the city, the Katani Kotzetz, we say that the planter needs to cut down the tree, V'enu nosein damim, but he's not entitled to restitution. Omer of Kahana, says of Kahana, was the Gos Abach say, Hainu dam inche, this is what the people say, Kidjo debe shutfei, lechamim v'lekarira. When you have two chefs in the kitchen, the pot and the dish ends up being not warm and not cold. Each one assumes that the other person is going to do somebody else, and then nothing gets done. Umay kusha, right? So meaning the point is, when it comes to Shimon and Reuven, so Reuven can say, Shimon, I need you to pay me back. I need a restitution. When it comes to the city, who are you going to for restitution? This person points you to that person, person points you to the next person. Who are you going to? Right? There's too many people, nothing gets done. Umay kusha. 1 second, what's the problem? Dilma, maybe just very practically, Shani hazeka dirab me hazeka diyachid. That damage of an individual is even the damage of the public, right? When it comes to Reuven and Shimon, okay, we could say, look, Reuven doesn't need to cut down his tree until Shimon commits to restitution. Okay, fine, we're not going to force Reuven to cut down his tree otherwise. But when Reuven's tree is infringing on sort of the rights, on the, convenience, whatever, it's infringing on the public, well then, that's a graver infringement, and therefore, you got to cut down the tree, and you are not entitled to restitution. So when it's an individual beseder, you can work it out with Shimon, say, hey, I want restitution. But when what Reuven is doing is infringing on the public, well, then we're kind of take a stronger position and say you have to cut it down and you are not entitled to demand restitution. So Ella, rather Itmadir of Kahana, we can apply the statement of Kahana about the multiple chefs in the kitchen. Aseifa Itmar, it's on the Seifa Ima Elon Kodam. If the tree was there first, before the city was there, so we say Kotetz v'nosin dam. So the owner of the tree needs to cut down the tree, but he's entitled to restitution. V'leimelu. Wait, why does it say that first he cuts down the tree and then he tries to get his restitution? V'leimelu, let the owner of the tree say, Fakir, havuli bereisha, first pay me restitution, v'hadar d'mei, v'hadar ekutz, and then I will cut down the tree. Rav Kana Kedera Kidra Deveshutve Luchamim Avalakurir says, Rav Kana, you know why? Because while in principle this guy is entitled to restitution, good luck. Right? When you have multiple chefs in the kitchen, the dish ends up remaining lukewarm. Good luck getting your restitution from the city. Each person's going to point you to the next person. So therefore, basically, if we say, if the owner of the tree says, first pay me and then cut down the tree, that tree's going to be up there for as far as we can tell. And we don't want the tree to be standing there because we want the city to look nice. So we actually say, look, technically speaking, you're entitled to restitution. Good luck getting it. But cut down the tree now because you need to cut down the tree and then start the whole process of bureaucracy and trying to get paid. But we say, so we say cut down the tree and then you're entitled to payment. Good luck getting it. But first cut down the tree. And he says, well, I want to get payment first. We say, no, cut down the tree first. Knowing that if you demand payment first, that tree is going to be there indefinitely. Okay, Safek ze kodam v'safek ze kodam kotzetz v'enosin damim. If we are unsure which was first, if we're unsure if the tree was there first, in which the owner is entitled to restitution, or if the tree, meaning if we, so we say either way, right? So, if we're not sure if the tree was there first or not, we say cut it down, and you're not entitled to restitution. So now, ma'ishno mibor da omrat lo yikot. Now by the pit, the halacha is, if the tree was there first, so then Reuven does not need to cut it down. If the pit was there first, then Reuven does need to cut it down. If we're not sure, so by the pit, Reuven does not need to cut it down. So, ma'ishna mibor de amrit lo yikot. How come by the pit, when we have a suffix which was there first, you do not cut down the tree? And how come by the city, when you're not sure which was there first, you do cut down the tree? Well, hosam devadai lo yikot lo lemeikotz koi. Well, because since by the pit, when we know for sure that the tree preceded, so then the tree could remain standing. So when we're suffix, also we say, you know what, the tree can remain standing. Sveikonami lo aminon le kot. So also when we're not sure, we do not say cut it down. That even when you know for sure that the tree preceded the city, you still need to cut it down, just that you're entitled to restitution, but you still need to cut it down. Well, sveikonami aminon le kot. So also when we're besuffic, we say cut it down. Okay, and what about getting paid, right? How come when we're not sure which preceded, so we say that the owner is not entitled to payment? So aminon le aisi raya yishkolwa, because amotz mechaver olav araya. If the owner of the tree now wants to get paid from the city for cutting down his tree, and we're not sure which was there first, so the people of the city would say, well, prove that your tree preceded the city, and then you're entitled to payment. But amotz mechaver olav araya, you'd have to prove it first. Says the Mishnah, Machikin as goren kavua mina'ir chamishim ama. We distance a kavua granary, a fixed granary. Gemara is going to explain what that is, from the city, chamishim ama, 50 amas. Lo yaisa adam goren kavua b'soch shalo. A person should not make a fixed granary in his property. Ela imkain yesh lo chamishim ama l'charuach, unless there's 50 amas in all directions. And you have to distance from your friend's, I guess, trees, plantings, and from his plowings. Interesting, Rashi says, near plowing, I'm not a farmer, but I guess apparently you would plow at the end of like the harvest, like at the beginning of the summer, even though you're not planting yet. You would plant it, I guess, right before the winter or at the beginning of the winter. But you would nonetheless plow at the end of the summer after the harvest, just to kill and break up any like weeds and things that you don't want, so that when it comes time to seed later on, you'll be ready for seeding. So that's the near. It's the plowing that isn't for planting. It's the plowing at the end of the harvest. So you got to distance this granary from the netios of your friend, or from this plowing, so that they do not damage. But the implication being that we're not saying 50 amas right now, right? We just said, right, as long as they don't damage, it could be less than 50 amas, right? So mashna ratio, mashna seifa, affecting Gemara. How come the ratio specifies 50 amas? How come the seifa just says as long as it doesn't cause damage? Sounds like it could even be less than 50 amas. So Abaye says, Abaye seifa son the gorin she'eno kavua. Well, the ratio says a gorin kavua, a fixed granary, needs to be 50 amas. But a gorin she'ena kavua, an unfixed granary, can be less than 50 amas as long as it doesn't cause damage. Heichidami gorin she'ena kavua. Now, what is this fixed granary versus an unfixed granary? Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina kol she'enu zore berachas. Says Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina that an unfixed granary is one that does not require a winnowing fork to winnow. Yeah, a few months, right, a month or two ago, I think back in BavaBasra, or even, I looked up winnowing. You can find it on YouTube. You take some like winnowing fork and you like throw up the wheat into the air, and then the chaff gets separated by the wind. So if it's small enough that you don't need this winnowing fork, I guess, so then it would be a gorin she'ena kavua. But if it requires a winnowing fork to winnow, so then it would be a gorin kavua. Okay. So Abaye says that, the ratio is talking about a gorin kavua, it needs 50 amas. The seifa is talking about gorin she'ena kavua, it does not need 50 amas, just as long as it doesn't cause damage. Rav Ashi Amar says, Rav Ashi, matam ka amar. The seifa of the Mishnah is simply explaining the ratio. My time, how come we distance a gorin kavua from the city 50 amas? Kidei shelo yazik, so that it doesn't cause any damage. But the seifa is not saying less than 50 amas, it's saying 50 amas. It's explaining why you need 50 amas so that there's no damage. Meisvei, we have a kasha on Abaye. Machikin gorin kavua min ha'ir 50 amma. We distance a gorin kavua 50 amas from the city. Just like we distance from the city 50 amas, kach machikin midiluav, also from gourds, umikishuav, and from cucumbers, uminitiosav, and from plantings, uminiro shel chaveru, and from your friends plowing 50 amas, 50 amas kedei shel yazik, so that they don't cause any damage. Sounds like Bishlam Rav Ashi. It sounds exactly like Rav Ashi is saying that it's explaining why it needs to be 50 amas away so that it doesn't cause any damage. By Rav Ashi nicha, Abaye kasha. Kasha. We say according to Abaye though, it's problematic because Abaye says that by the plantings and by the near and the damage, it's less than 50 amas. Over here in the Bryce it says pretty explicitly that there has to be 50 amas away so that it doesn't cause damage, like Rav Ashi says. So now says the Gemara, Bishla mi mikshoav umidiluav. So I understand why you'd have to distance from gourds and from cucumbers. The ozil avka v'osi belibe umatzvila, because the chaff, the dust, or whatever is coming from the granary is going to get into these plants and they're going to ruin them. But what's the big deal about the plowing? Because it makes the plowing things into some kind of thick, it becomes like some kind of fertile, it makes a mess in this plowing stuff for the next time you come to seed, and it's going to get ruined, and therefore that's going to be a problem. Friends, that was Daf Chaf Daled or Masechta BavaBasra. The first part of the Daf, we continued with the discussing the opinion of Reb Chanina about Rov v'Karov Halech Acher Harov, and then we saw 2 more Mishnayos about distancing trees from cities to make them beautiful, and also distancing granaries. So that was Daf Chav Daled, Masechta BavaBasra. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.